A victory for the Pacers in Paris. They bounced back in a huge way against the Spurs. Haliburton's flurry was amazing. Siakam was great. And there's so much to talk about on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Saturday/Sunday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, much to discuss as the Pacers get a victory. That was an easy translate. In Paris, they destroy the Spurs. They win the series on aggregate after losing by 30. That's how much they beat the Spurs by, 136-98 the final. They won this game in three stretches. We're going to talk about all of them. Tyrese Haliburton headlining one of them with one of, if not the, actually certainly the best 3 minutes of his career, probably, all with jumpers. Pacers were better in just about every way in this game. In fact, I kept tweeting this during the game, but in the first game of this series, the Pacers' most points in a quarter on Thursday was 30, and the fewest they allowed in a quarter was also 30. In this game, the Pacers scored over 30 in all four quarters and only allowed the Spurs to hit 30 once. What a response. I mean, they did just about everything better outside of a third quarter that made everybody very queasy. Spurs took the lead in said third quarter as the Pacers roll to a 38-point win. But the headline of the game was three stretches, and the headline of those three stretches was the Tyrese Haliburton flurry in the final minutes of the third quarter. Unbelievable. And at the most pivotal time of the game, Spurs had roared back. The quarter starts with a Pascal Siakam jumper and from the mid-range. Pacers go up by 17 when he hit that, and the Spurs at halftime made an adjustment. They put Victor Wembanyama on Siakam instead of Turner, and that was a big thing. Pacers did a good job adjusting from game one. They had Turner spacing more. He was on the weak side. Siakam was setting the screens. The floor was more open. They could pass. They could shoot. Turner shot it better in this game. Like, every adjustment they needed to do better in the Wemby battle happened, right? And so the Spurs said, okay, fine, we'll just erase all that with this one move. And it worked, like, immediately, right? Like, instantly, that made it harder for the Pacers to score. The Spurs offense was humming. They were getting in transition. There was by far their best offensive stretch of this game. And after not leading the entire night, the Spurs take a lead at 80-79 with 4:16 to go after Chris Paul banked in a left wing three. I think every fan thought, oh boy, this isn't good. They're banking in threes now. In comes Tyrese Haliburton time. Holy cow. He checked in just before this, 5:27 to go in the quarter. So he's been in for about a minute as the Pacers lose their lead. And he gets a rebound. An offensive rebound after an Aaron Nesmith miss. After a Chris Paul miss, he gets a rebound, comes down the other end, pull-up jumper, gives the Pacers a lead with 3:25 to go. And the Spurs actually take a timeout after that jump shot because Victor Wembanyama was asking to come out of the game. He was gassed. He had played like 9 straight minutes. And all of a sudden, it was Tyrese Haliburton time. So the first jumper, I'm just going to watch all of the them on the NBA's tweet and run through them. But this is what made this stretch so special. It was all just nasty jump shots. Like, what are you going to guard kind of shots, right? Turns around, Stephon Castle, pull up from the right elbow, cash. Pacers back in the lead, right? So a big momentum shot to go into that timeout with the lead and Tyrese Haliburton to feel good about his scoring. That was with 3:25 to go in that quarter. And he got fouled. He was complaining about a no foul in that stretch. Pacers' very next possession, you will never guess who scored. It was Tyrese Haliburton once again, this time being guarded by Keldon Johnson. Triple crossover, takes a Thomas Bryant screen, gets a switch, gets it back from Nembhard, and drills a three from the top of the key over Jeremy Sohan. Sick play. All of a sudden, Pacers are up 4 again. And this was a huge stretch because Wemby had just come out. And it was good for the Pacers in this game that they were doing much better in the minutes without him. But he was a dominant force in that third quarter that guided the Spurs lead. Next trip, Nembhard steal, throws it up to Haliburton. No Spurs player gets to him. Jeremy Sohan's trying to prevent a Thomas Bryant lob. Harrison Barnes just trying to prevent a Siakam corner three, and Haliburton just rips a left wing three and banks it in. Matches the Chris Paul banked three from a similar spot. All of a sudden, the Pacers are upset. That alone was a huge 8-0 run that happened in exactly 1 minute, right? That alone could have saved the game for the Pacers. He was not close to done, which is what makes this so special. I'm not even halfway through the video. Pacers next trip, side out. Haliburton throws into Thomas Bryant. Thomas Bryant pitches it right back. He dribbles around a Bryant screen and drills a three right over Keldon Johnson. I mean, it was just, that's 11 points in about a minute and a half. They get the Spurs score. It's an 8-point game. Haliburton runs up full speed, turns around, step back long two over Keldon Johnson. Perfect swish. The entire Pacers bench is going crazy. Tyrese Haliburton screaming, saying, no, they can't guard me. And then the final trip, Thomas Bryant screen, doesn't really get a switch. Julian Champagnie chasing Haliburton around. He pulls up, almost draws a foul, and hits the three. Just could not miss. Shot after shot after shot. And all of a sudden, with, again, reminder, 4 minutes and 16 seconds to go, Chris Paul scores. Spurs lead. 3:25 on the clock was the first Haliburton make. That last three I described over Champagnie put the Pacers up 95-83 with 42 seconds left in the third quarter. That means in 2 minutes and 43 seconds, Tyrese Haliburton scored 16 points. Over half of his total for the game came in just that flurry, all on long jumpers. In fact, I think the closest shot he had was the first one, which was 17 feet. All tough shots and all him and a screener creating an action, and he just ripped it over a defender. Incredible stretch, ended by a three for Pascal Siakam, putting the Pacers back up 15, which, had Harrison Barnes that hit a basically buzzer-beating three to close the quarter, would have meant that the Pacers and Spurs third quarter was played to an even draw, which was crazy because the first basically 9 minutes were absolutely dominant basketball from the Spurs. The Pacers couldn't score. It was unbelievable. 16 points from Haliburton in just that stretch was basically half the Pacers' points the entire quarter. And he had a running dunk early in the frame, so he did score over half of the Pacers' points in the third quarter, including the best scoring stretch of his career, all on jump shots. Spurs, like I mentioned, Sohan is in there. Champagnie was in there. Wemby was in for the first shot. Keldon Johnson was on him for one. Harrison Barnes on the floor, but wasn't really involved in any of this. Different defenders, didn't matter. Tried different coverages, switch, don't switch. Oh, here comes a handoff. Uh-oh, they had nothing. They had nothing they could do to stop Tyrese Haliburton. So you could say a lot about his stat line and his game coming in one stretch. Tyrese Haliburton finishes with 28 points on 17 shots, 6 of 9 from deep, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, only 1 turnover, plus 15. 28-4 is like not that exceptional for him in terms of a total points created kind of number for a game. But that stretch was just absurdity. I have never seen him on that hot of a jump shot streak. And I've seen some crazy jump shot streaks from Tyrese Haliburton. It was unbelievable. And it saved the Pacers the game. They rolled in the fourth quarter. They had a ton of it changed the momentum, right? The Spurs were better in this game for 9 minutes. The Pacers were better in 39. But that could have very easily flipped had that stretch not gone the Pacers' way. And it was very obtainable and possible because Wemby came off the floor. And right when that happened, Pascal Siakam came in, which meant the Pacers had their stars on the floor, right? Wemby came out with 3:22 to go. He is asking for the timeout, made it obvious he was going out. So Siakam comes in for Turner. Toppin comes out for Bryant. They were matching a lot of Turner-Wembanyama minutes this night as well, and a great defensive gift from Turner in that way. I'm getting ahead of myself. That stretch saved the game. Pacers were better to start the fourth, and they put them away. They had a great stretch later, but that sequence from Haliburton was the game. I mean, just unbelievable. And you could tell he was having a feeling it kind of Haliburton-y night when in the second quarter, he had a pass where he drew Wemby and his defender and a defender in the corner were all locked in on Haliburton on the left wing. And he looked off to the corner for a sideways shuffle into the lane pass for a Turner dunk. One of his best passes of the season, certainly. Incredible game for Haliburton, headlined by that stretch. And that got the Pacers the win, right? Their fourth quarter would have won them the game anyway. Like the Spurs only scored 12 points the whole fourth quarter. But it would have been a different looking quarter by far had that stretch from Haliburton not happened. There were actually 3 stretches that defined this game for the Pacers. That one by far the most fun and noteworthy. The other 2 were at much different times, and I think they were both equally important to the Pacers getting this win. Late in the first half was another one. This game was not close, but getting hairy-ish. It was tied in the middle of the second quarter. Pacers were up, 5 and then 2, and then all of a sudden they needed some juice. They needed to get some buckets and get rolling before halftime because they did look like they were playing better than the Spurs for much of this game. Nembhard comes in with 5:44 to go, and the Pacers up by 1 in the first half. And then it's kind of back and forth, and the Pacers were up 3 after 2 Trey Jones free throws with 4:45 to go. It's 50-47. The rest of the first half was 15-3 Pacers, who were then up big at the break as a result of that stretch. They were up 15 at halftime because of that stretch. Only 3 points in almost 5 minutes for the Spurs, who hit those free throws with 4:45 to go. And then Devin Vassell hit a tough step back through with 2:25 to go. That's it. They made one shot in the last 4 minutes and 45 seconds of the second half, or excuse me, of the first half. And in that stretch, Thomas Bryant put back, Mathurin free throw, Siakam scored, Nembhard hit a three, Turner had that dunk I just described on that pass from Haliburton. Everybody on the floor was contributing for the Pacers. That stretch was massive. The game was getting close. It was getting tight after the Pacers had a really nice start. And instead, they were up big, which gave them a huge cushion to not be trailing for more than one possession in the middle of that third quarter. I thought that was a crucial stretch for the Pacers in an otherwise kind of choppy first half. They were mostly the better team, but that Spurs stretch that got it close was certainly damaging. And then the middle of the fourth quarter, the Pacers put this one away with what I believe ended as, my notes has 14-0, but I don't think that's right. I think it ended as a 17-0 run for the Pacers that actually ended the competitive portion of the basketball game. Spurs stuck on 94 for forever, right? Stephon Castle dunks, and to be clear, a nasty dunk with 9:25 to go. Poor Ben Shepherd got yammed on. Aaron Nesmith scored 14 seconds later. It was a 12-point game, suddenly a 14-point game, and it was 106-94, and then all of a sudden it was 116-94, and then all of a sudden it was 123-94, 17-0 run that lasts for about 4 minutes, a little over 4 minutes. Really good offense from the Pacers there. The Spurs end it with a Harrison Barnes dunk with 5:17 to go, but the game was over at that point. Wembanyama did not come out much later. He actually probably would have come out earlier, but he was at the foul line when the Spurs mostly cleared their bench. He did get some cheers with 3.5 minutes to go, but he was on the floor for a lot of that stretch. Wembanyama was, but Nembhard was playing good. TJ McConnell had a great fourth quarter to guide that stretch. Siakam was playing well. They just kind of solved some of the problems they had in the third quarter. It was a lot of very loud, powerful plays from both teams on both ends, but that put the game away. It was a 12-point game. They probably would have won, although Wemby was having an awesome and impactful second half, but that did it. That made it not even close. And the Pacers, even with their deep bench guys, ran away with it. +8 for Johnny Furphy and Ray J. Dennis, +10 for Jarris Walker, who only played the last 4:33 of this game. Probably going to talk about that tomorrow on a Pacers wrap-up podcast. But every stretch for the Pacers was important in this game. But those three, right, the last 5 minutes of the first half, that about 4 or 5 minutes in the fourth quarter, so that's 10 minutes, plus Haliburton's 3-minute flurry. Basically, those 13 minutes, the Pacers were, off the top of my head, plus like 45 in those 13 minutes. And the rest of the game was maybe even advantage Spurs slightly. But the Pacers were so good in those stretches that the rest of the game didn't matter at all. Very impressive win for the Pacers and very impressive stretches to actually get this done. And they did a lot of stuff better that I want to close this out with, talking a little bit about every player's game, but really about the stuff that they did much better than the pretty embarrassing game from before. From Thursday. So let's close out today's Locked On Pacers with all that. Before we get into that, though, we need to talk about FanDuel. It's conference finals time, whatever I forget the name of it is for NFL. And from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going on FanDuel. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team to just look to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Make your second listen Locked On Spurs. I'm sure Jeff has lots to say about both games in Paris. Some chippiness at the end of this one. I'm sure will come up, but Pacers much better in every way. And I talked about Wembanyama. I'm sure Jeff did too. That was a big swing in this game. In fact, in the first game, the Pacers did poorly in the Wemby minutes and the non-Wemby minutes. And I said, hey, the Pacers bench being bad in the first game was just killer. Like, they will not win if they're that bad, because then the Wemby minutes, even if they're even, the Pacers are screwed. Well, today, let's just run through some plus minuses. Obi Toppin, +9. That's not great. He was in there for a tough stretch in the third quarter where the Pacers took Siakam out and put Toppin in early because of what I just said. Siakam being guarded by Wemby, they went to Toppin's shooting, plus that meant they could bring Siakam in late in the quarter at a different time than normal, and that turned out to be huge as he was on the floor for that Haliburton stretch. Regardless, +9 for Toppin, +26 team high for Thomas Bryant, who was really good, +22 for Aaron Nesmith, +17 for McConnell, who had one of his best quarters in months, +13 for Ben Shepherd, who couldn't even make a shot in this game. The bench was way better in this game. Before we actually talk about why for all the players, that was huge because that meant the Pacers won the minutes without Wembanyama in this game by 25. Massive turnaround. And Wemby's amazing. We all saw what he did in these two games. His stat line in this one, 20 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. Amazing player. But the Pacers, when they win it by that much, it's going to be tough. And yet they also won the Wemby minutes. So it almost didn't matter as much. Even if the Spurs had won the Wemby minutes by nearly as much as they did last game, it would have been close. Wembanyama -13 in this one. He didn't shoot it as well. He only had 1 block. The Pacers did much better of neutralizing what he does on the defensive end with their Turner adjustment. So the stories of the Wemby minutes when they were and weren't happening from the first game completely flipped in both ways. Credit to the Pacers for adjusting. And that's part of why it's so hard to beat the same team twice in a regular season setting when you only have 1 day to adjust, is because usually the losing team is more inclined to make adjustments. They feel like they did stuff wrong they need to fix. The winning team's like, hey, we played great. Let's do that again. And it doesn't really work that well. Some of this game was the shooting flipping. I mentioned the Spurs and all these crazy stats about how they had a season high by far 43 assists in the first game, just 22. And this one, they tied their season high with 50% three-point shooting in the first game, just 34.4% in this one, right? A lot of the stuff that the Pacers deserve, blame for allowing to happen. Their defense was bad. Regressed, though, in a way that the Pacers deserve credit for playing better on defense, but also the Spurs came back to earth a bit, and the Pacers shot way better, 43.6% from deep themselves in this game. And the Pacers hit the offensive glass pretty hard, which meant they dominated the possession battle. Pacers with more offensive rebounds and fewer turnovers. In fact, 12 fewer turnovers plus 1 extra offensive rebound means they took 17 more shots. That's a little misleading because the Spurs took 11 more free throws, but that is still noteworthy for this game that the Pacers got the possession battle going. So lots of stuff that went very poorly for them in the first game in that Wembanyama stretch with that bad shooting. They were giving up points in the paint like crazy. 66 for the Spurs in the first game, only 46 in this one. 62 points in the paint for the Pacers tonight after less than 55. I can't remember the exact number in the first one. Everything they did bad kind of flipped, and it started with Turner's defense on Wembanyama. Very clear minutes match for much of this game. Turner didn't shoot it great, 2 for 7 from deep, but I thought it was important the way they switched it up, the way they had Turner operating on the offensive end, and he still played a nice defensive game. Myles Turner, 3 blocks in this one. Out-blocking Wembanyama is very tough to do. He had to chase Victor Wembanyama around. He was trying to play. They were pressuring 94 feet. They were just way better on that end of the floor and forced turnovers like crazy for this young Spurs team. They were throwing hot passes all over the gym. So credit the Pacers for finding those adjustments. I thought they did very well in the way they defended the Spurs star the whole game, the way they adjusted their offensive game plan to get better shots, the way they reacted to the Spurs in-game adjustment rotationally to get the right lineups on the floor at the right time, and they made threes. That also helps quite a bit. So good performance on the Pacers. Haliburton, the star of the show scoring-wise. Siakam, very good in this one, 10 for 18 for 23 points. The quietest 23.11 rebound double-double maybe ever, because like I mentioned earlier, there were so many just loud, emphatic plays in this game. Like I mentioned Stephon Castle dunk on Ben Shepherd. The very next basket was an Aaron Nesmith layup where he drove on the baseline and like twice just slammed into his defender and moved him out of the way for a tough layup, right? That's just like a loud play. And it was huge because it expanded the Pacers' lead at an important time in the game, right? Like that stuff really matters. And there were so many big plays that a quiet kind of 23-point mid-range jumper you to death guy who made 9 twos doesn't stand out. But Siakam was very good. I already talked about Turner. Andrew Nembhard, the unsung hero of this game, plus 25. The second most on the Pacers, only behind Thomas Bryant. He was 6 for 9 from the field, made both of his threes. 8 boards, 9 assists, 3 steals, no turnovers. He was amazing. And he guarded Devin Vassell a lot of the game. Vassell was incredible in the first one. Vassell 0 for 2 on twos, 2 for 6 on threes, 1 turnover, 2 assists. Minus 30 for Devin Vassell. Incredible defense from Andrew Nembhard, who fills in just countless impressive stats when he plays games like this. There's a reason that he played more than any non-Myles Turner starter, because he played great. And Myles Turner played the most minutes because he was minutes matching for a while with Victor Wembanyama. Ben Mathurin, much quieter after a terrific first game. He was by far, to me, the Pacers' best or most consistent performer in that first one. 4 for 10 for him today, and 3 of those makes were from 3. He still played well. He actually set the tone early with some good offense, but a really dumb tech he had shoving Stephon Castle in the third quarter. I'm not actually sure he even played at all after that, or very little minutes after that moment. He was fine, but that very much limited his impact in plus minus. It was a very, very stupid tech at a key time of the game for Mathurin, who just shoved the Castle after a dunk for very little reason that we could tell. They were even talking about it after the play on the court. Those two were. So that's why he was neutralized both in statistics and minutes and plus minus compared to the rest of the team. But he set the tone early with some threes that were very important. Obi Toppin's rotation change turned out to be important. He didn't shoot it particularly well, and this one did have 5 boards and 2 assists. The rest of the bench, Ben Shepherd was 0 for 3. He had a quieter night from him. But the rest of the bench was terrific. Aaron Nesmith. And by the way, I should note this. Aaron Nesmith, over 20 minutes for the first time, almost matched Matherin's minutes load. And I put in that there was a stretch in this game where they turned to him earlier than they normally do and put him with mostly starters. And I thought, I'm going to remember that they turned to him, for spacing in that third quarter when they couldn't get the threes going to shoot over Wemby. I thought it was noteworthy they turned to Nesmith with the starters much earlier than normal. Regardless, 4 for 7 for Nesmith. He hit a 3, 5 boards, 2 assists, too many turnovers and fouls, but he played a very nice game. TJ McConnell, his best game in a minute, 6 for 9 for him with 5 boards and 5 assists. He was great in the fourth quarter. He contested a Wemby shot in this game, which was hilarious, and beat him on a hezzy move to get to the rim. And Thomas Bryant's 13 minutes were just awesome. I mean, what can you say? 4 for 6. Huge rebounds, 3 steals. He was hustling and running and drawing contact. I thought he was really good. Impossible to think of, a better pick swap possible acquisition that they could have got at backup center in terms of style, what they could offer. Rotationally, Bryant's been just great. So lots of guys had really nice, impactful games for the Pacers in that way. And I think there's some guys who would have liked to have different nights. Ben Shepherd missing open threes and smoked the layup. In fact, when the Pacers were playing bad in the first half, they were just clunking layups all night. It was crazy. They were 11 for 18 at one point inside 4 feet, and then they finished 23 of 25, meaning they made 12 of their last 17, which isn't that much better, but some of the misses early were just comically bad. Just what are you doing kind of stuff there. So everybody chipped in something in this game, I would say. And then Ray J. Dennis came in late, which I'm only pointing out because he played both of these games in Paris because they were both blowouts, which means he's played 5 NBA games. 40% of them were in Paris. Incredible for him. Really fun game for the Pacers and really good response. This shows what they are. They're very good at responding when they just get punched in the mouth, right? And I said this on the last podcast, and I know a lot of people rolled their eyes because of how bad the Pacers played on Thursday, but I said this. The Pacers' worst loss of the season by score margin was in Boston. Right after Christmas, they lost by 37, and everybody knew why. It was a back-to-back after playing OKC, and the Celtics were really good. And then they won 2 nights later in the same place. And I was like, everybody was really panicking about that first loss in Paris, and they should. The Pacers played terrible against the not great team. The Spurs are solid. But this is what they do, right? It's so hard to beat a team twice. They found the adjustments rotationally and stylistically. They put the right guys in position to succeed. And during 3 crazy stretches that lasted somewhere between 12 and 15 minutes, they just absolutely kicked the Spurs' teeth in. Really impressive response from this team. And now can come home. They can come home and regroup and try to get their internal and body clocks back on target and try to look like the team that was playing before they left for Paris, because that's what their season's all about. They have a somewhat simple schedule. They don't play till Wednesday, but they have a somewhat simple on paper schedule until the All-Star break with Pistons, Hawks, Jazz, Blazers, Clippers, Lakers, Knicks, and Wizards. Some good teams in there, certainly, but a chance for them to, even if they just go like 1 game over 500, exactly 500, whatever, they'll be sitting pretty come trade deadline, come All-Star break, whatever you want to say, and they deserve a lot of credit for getting a road win, a true road win this time, because it was a Spurs home game, air quotes, in Paris as the Pacers get it done. Last thoughts from me. Wemby, I just love talking about this guy. I mean, it's impossible to stop him, right? And he had 3 dunks in this game that happened the same way, where he's just so unique that you have to fight your instincts. He is being guarded by someone on the Pacers, and a Spurs player beats their man on the perimeter. That's already a problem for the Pacers, right? Like Mamoukelashvili beat someone into the lane. And your instinct as a defender is step up, stop the ball. Don't let the guy walk in for a layup. But the second you lean forward or take a step towards the ball handler, the Spurs just throw the ball straight up in the air and no Wembanyama dunks. Like, your instinct has to be to stay on the tall guy, but you just kind of can't, right? It's so tough to handle that, but the Pacers did way better at that in this game. He was terrific in all the games out there, but the Pacers responded well. They adjusted. They shot better. They defended better. They got to the paint more often. And after a disastrous third quarter, Tyrese Haliburton saved the day. And the Pacers have 25 wins as they come back from Paris. Tomorrow, time permitting, guest permitting, we'll have a guest to talk about takeaways from the Pacers trip and conclude with some rotation thoughts, because Jarris Walker did not play until garbage time in this game, the first out of the rotation game for him, although he still appeared in every game this year. So I want to talk about all that. Tuesday, we'll talk about all-star stuff because the starters have been announced and the reserves will get announced on Thursday of this week. And then Wednesday, we'll look at credible trade rumors we've seen about the Pacers so far this transaction cycle. And then it's back to games. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode and these Paris-related podcasts. Back tomorrow, talking more Pacers with a guest. Thank y'all for listening. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.